Welcome in the latest episode of the Betting Pitch Soccer Podcast. Tonight we're going through the Champions League knockout rounds, just the Tuesday card, as I have not yet watched Wednesday or what the matches will be for Wednesday. So we went a little bit reverse order, but we are live. We are good on a lot of, I guess, knockout pressure, and that's what we're expecting on this episode. It's going to be briefer than normal, but do expect a Champions League episode coming out tomorrow night to get the second half of this round of 32 knockout round. And then, of course, we'll have Europa League coming on Thursday. Don't think we're doing much Conference League because I can barely tell you what teams are playing in there or nor what countries they're in. Going to go through the two advanced numbers to try to give you some history on what I've been watching and since I've been tracking these numbers. And then let's try to find some winners and ultimate best bet will come end of show just specifically on the Tuesday card. And we'll find some winners. We'll start an early round, early matchup. That is Bruges on the road at Atletico Madrid after an incredible first leg. Saw a 3-3 final. We did have Bruges plus 1/2 of a goal from trailing 1-0 off of a ridiculous penalty in the 8th minute to then being down 2-0, then somehow fighting all the way back to equalize, and then only to concede on an own goal was about as heart-wrenching as you could think. But I got to credit Bruges. Not only did they score 2 goals, get back and tie the matchup, equalize in the second half, but they also scored a third pretty late, right before stoppage time, that was ruled offside, but great finish by Christophe Zolis, I believe is his first name, but Zolis I know is his last. A Greek who has been all over the German Bundesliga, and I think it's where following the other leagues does help because he's found his way to Bruges in Belgium. Yeah, definitely a lower tier league, but he's been playing in Champions League, been great, and honestly, he's been really talented for years and years and years. I want to say it was at Norwich before he went to Dusseldorf, I want to say. Norwich in the championship, Dusseldorf in the German Schweizer Liga, and almost got them into the Bundesliga, but lost in a relegation playoff when they collapsed. But awesome run, and I'll stop singing his praises and let's get into this matchup. So, Atletico Madrid currently 1.25 goal favorites right now with more juice on the home team, 8 more cents of juice of the 20, minus 114. Total's 3.25, and it's just 2 cents more to the over, so not really a great indicator of where this one's going to go. But since I've been watching this, the spread has fallen from 1.5 goals, very juiced, to 1.25, about equi-juiced or a little bit more on the Atleti side. So not a huge move, but definitely, a single goal loss for Bruges would get them knocked out of this tournament, but also would cover the spread, but only winning half a bet now versus winning a full bet from the earlier number. So we'll see where this number settles. I would expect Atletico Madrid, being the bigger name, would be more popular and that they would get more of the money, but who knows? And I'll certainly be watching that. And the first indicators that Bruges is getting bet, and I think it's deserved. Bruges, to me, for the smaller minnow type squads, like Atletico Madrid spend so much more on their team and their club than Bruges do. But what I generally look for are underdogs that want to keep a game really, really low scoring. Bruges are not really that way, and they want to score goals, which does worry me a little bit about a trip to the Wanda Metropolitano, now called Riyadh Air or some oil-rich country's airline. And the big question is, can Bruges play the same type of game? They've had, when you hear Belgium, you don't think of one of the biggest clubs in Europe, but they've had really great success. 2 seasons ago were awesome in Champions League, didn't qualify for Champions League because of their league position. The next season, I think a lot because it took so much out of them, that run in Champions League. But they've been here before. They knocked out Atalanta a couple seasons ago, a lot because of a second leg performance, if I'm not mistaken, on the road in Bergamo. And here they're going to Madrid. And while Atleti play a lot better at home, we saw some, honestly, to me, it's the defeatist kind of tendencies of Atletico Madrid is that Diego Simeone, great manager, has been awesome for a long time, and who am I to poo-poo what he's done? But he gets very conservative when he has a lead, and this is not the same defensive side that he's had with Atletico Madrid for years. They spent a ton of money on bringing in attacking players, and they just don't defend the same way. David Hancho, probably their best, I think, off-season signing, is a left back. They're playing at left center back, basically. Good creator, but not a defender in his, yes, capable defender, but that's not his bread and butter, really. They've also moved Marc Pubil, who's talked about as a left back or right back or full back in general, but he was a defensive midfielder for Levante before his most recent move, and then his move to Atletico Madrid. So I don't know like who follows these leagues and just forgets these things, but and honestly, the teams that just convert because I guess everyone plays fullbacks at center back now because especially if you're going to be really offensive. But the problem is Bruges can score goals. They've got a lot of talent. I really like what I saw from them. Belgium's generally seen as a feeding ground for growing club talent that they can sell off to other big name clubs. But I mean, I was really impressed with everyone I saw on the pitch for Bruges. That's not a surprise to me. Van Aken's one of the most stable midfielder captains that's out there. I'm kind of amazed he stayed in Belgium so long. And I got to say, I think Bruges are a really live dog here in the early matchup too, which I do think limits a little bit the amount of the crowd you'll see. 9 p.m. Central Time or Central European Time starts. That's normal Champions League slate, but this one's like 3 hours earlier. I've been to one of these matches actually where I wore this Inter shirt that I'm wearing. If you're watching on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. Make a comment. It's big for the search rankings. We're on YouTube at the real G Warner. We're one short of 250 followers. Looking forward to our whatever bicentennial half, whatever it's called. We're about to get there for the U.S. this summer as well, but different type of scenario, of course. And of course, hit the follow button on Instagram at the real G Warner if you want the reels that I will have an ultimate best bet coming out for this episode. But I think I'm pretty happy that I laid off the under in the opener. I guess the first leg of Bruges hosting Atletico Madrid. Weather was pretty nasty. It was raining quite a bit. But if not for a ridiculous penalty from, I think, a defender, a young defender for Belgium who's been around, but ultimately that's a lot of the problem you deal with is a lot of youth and not fully made for matured players. Lost his balance, threw his arm out in probably a panic mode in the box, and that's a penalty every time. Should have been, even though the announcers, the English guys, were like, "Oh, I don't know if that's actually going to be a penalty," when it's like the most obvious one out there. But good luck. And honestly, if you're trying to learn the rules based on English commentators in Europe, good luck because they have different rules in England than they do in other leagues, and they are on their own, alone, ignoring handballs all over the place still, which is nice, but it's not the same way that they do it across all of Europe. And I mean, we could get an English ref here, won't get a Spanish one, won't get a Belgian one, but there's plenty out there, and we'll see what happens in this matchup. Total for this one, 3.25 goals. It does suggest a high scoring matchup, which you'll see whoever's trailing in the final minutes, they'll send the goalkeeper up, and because they know their Champions League playoff life is on the line, and that's dangerous for playing unders. But also, if this is getting late, both these teams will hold on for dear life for extra time. I think we saw that in the first leg after Bruges equalized 3-3. I thought they weren't really pushing for it. They did have one kind of attack with Alexander Soloth, who's so good, but it was 1-on-4, and I thought they weren't even sending another guy up. Maybe they're exhausted, but that seemed like a directive from the sideline, I got to say. And Bruges were kind of going for it, but also were happy to get to 3-3, considering how they trailed twice in the match, once by 2-0 and once 3-2 late. But I think if this is tied, we see a pretty conservative slate towards the end, and that's great for a full bet winner if you're playing Bruges plus 1.25. As for the two advanced number, we have minus 650 on Atletico Madrid, so 650 US will win you 100. On Bruges plus 416, 100 wins you 416 US. In terms of movement for this one, I'll give you an idea of kind of where we've been. So the first number that I saw was Atleti minus 550 favorite, so they've climbed about $100, 100 cents. Dollar per, however I should phrase that. Not worth talking to now and trying to think it out, but it's basically up 15% from that initial number. Bruges have climbed from plus 366 plus 416, so not really has changed too much, honestly. I mean, I think if you were playing Bruges, you were hoping that they'd win the first leg. Obviously, not losing is big, but it's only better than not losing by 2 or 3 or 4. So drawing is important, but they've got to somehow go in advance and win a penalty shootout on the road at Atleti. Though honestly, Atleti have not been great in penalty shootouts in the last few seasons, especially at home with second legs there. So this is not by any means a foregone conclusion of Atleti moving through. I do think that they'll probably win this, or more likely to advance at home because they're there. But I think Bruges are very live. Plus 1.25 looks very, very interesting to me. And now we'll move to the bigger slate of games. We'll start with Inter Milan, as I'm wearing a polo of theirs from a couple seasons ago when I was back doing soccer trips back in the day. And they are at home to Bodo Glimt. I guess recap of the first matchup. So Buda Glimt have a 3-1 aggregate advantage. That means Inter would need to win by 2 goals, or this matchup is over. Win by 3, and they will knock out Buda Glimt and not go to extra time. Win by 2, and we're seeing extra time. That does certainly play into the number here in terms of so current number, current price is Buda Glimt a 2-goal underdog with a little bit more juice on them. I think because the push on 2 is really, really valuable. So I certainly understand that. Where has this number been? Right about here. It was 2 minus 116. So we've gotten 1 cent cheaper. So I guess 1 cent worth more of has been bet on Inter since then. Big name Inter. They've been playing really well in Italy. Might have taken Buda Glimt a little bit less seriously than they should have because they rotated quite a bit. Didn't start Marcus Thuram instead of Esposito, which isn't like embarrassing. I mean, they do that all the time. That's one of the reasons why I continue to back Inter Milan as much as I can, or bet their unders, or really bet them throughout their entire Champions League run to the final last year, including the final, which is a blowout. But unfortunately, couldn't win every bet on them, I guess, the whole season, nor to advance. And every time that I did. But they controlled the game and honestly let Buda Glimt score what seemed to me a really lucky finish by Jens Peter Hauge, who was awesome and didn't make it at Eintracht Frankfurt, but clearly is more talented than a top of Norway type of player. But he came across a goal to take the lead 2-1. So Buda Glimt took the lead, Inter equalized, and it looked like Inter had controlled the matchup, but Buda Glimt took their one chance, and that seemed to be like how it was going to end 1-1. And then Buda Glimt got another chance, 2-1, on a great finish that Jan Sommer had no chance on. And then right afterwards, seeming as Inter were kind of panicked, got another goal. And then Inter didn't push as hard as I kind of expected them to. They pushed, but they weren't really going crazy for it. I don't know if what that suggests. I mean, it is a little weird playing on artificial turf, and you never know who's worried about their knees, ankles, Achilles, because these players, and they know if one injury and they're in big trouble for their earnings potential. But you could argue that's part of why Buda Glimt are so good at home, not just because they're in the Arctic Circle, basically at the top of the globe, and it's freezing cold, but also because they play on artificial turf, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's allowed in Champions League, but young boys born do it in Switzerland too, and I'm sure others as well. So we'll see if that ever changes. But in terms of the total here, which is generally where I play Inter Milan games under, it is gigantic, 3.75 with a lot more juice on the under right now. In terms of where this has moved, it's gone 1 cent more expensive to under. So 1 cent more expensive to Inter, one more expensive to under. And what I think the question is how many goals do Inter score? They need 2, and they're going to be pushing until they get 2, and they're going to keep pushing because once they have that momentum, I don't expect anything to change with their strategy. The question is, how long does Buda Glimt hold out? Can they get a goal on a counterattack or just scoring in some form or fashion themselves? I think Inter will control this matchup. They're much better at San Siro than they will be on. They can make the grass as wet as possible, make it as easy as possible for them to pass. And Buda Glimt, truthfully, are a goal scoring team just like Bruges, which is maybe why these two teams have gotten here, made it to the knockouts. The Buda Glimt, I think, had to beat Manchester City and also Atletico Madrid on the road to get to this level, and they did. And that was awesome for them, good for them. And I really enjoyed watching them in their climb from Europa Conference League to Europa League to Champions League in the last few years. And they looked the part. They defended pretty well, didn't give Inter a lot of chances, just gave them the ball and said good luck. So I think if you like Buda Glimt here, I mean, the 2 is interesting. You probably like them to score a goal if you're playing +2 as opposed to under 3 3/4. And we might get 4. Juice is currently the opposite direction, suggesting we'd fall to 3.5, but it's a gigantic total for any Inter Milan matchup. Even though they need to score a bunch of goals, Buda Glimt will be doing everything they can to prevent that from happening. So for me, I'm pretty interested in under there. I'm interested also in Buda Glimt. The number is bigger than I made it, clearly, but that happens when we get across 1.5 goals usually. And they needed to win by 2. I wasn't sure they'd make them that big of a favorite, Inter that is, but they did, and I think that makes sense. Now, 2 advanced numbers also interesting. So Inter, despite being down 3-1 on aggregate, which means they need to win by 2 goals to force extra time, 3 goals in regulation, 90 minutes plus stoppage time to advance. If they don't do that, they don't advance, and they're still favored to get through. So -130 are Inter, Buda Glimt +100. That's a huge change from Buda Glimt initially being +523 and Inter -900, or 9-1 on, or 1-9, if you will. That number reopen at plus 109 on the Budo Glimt side. So we've seen some movement down, which is, I think, somewhat telling. We'll see. I don't know necessarily if that's something that people believe in or something like that, but um, I do think that there's been at least 9 cents of juice that has changed hands in this one towards the Budo Glimt side. And so I think there's believers out there. I think I'm one of them. I'm holding Inter in a Champions League pool, and I'm pretty concerned about it. So I think that all makes a lot of sense. And honestly, so we've dropped 9%, like I said, about 8 or so% on the Inter side, as the handles are important, of course, for sports books. But um, to me, I think this is a really, really fascinating matchup. We'll see how Bodo Glimt defend. I don't know that they're necessarily going to defend very well. It's going to be hard, but they're going to be camped and trying to counterattack. And honestly, there's +2 and under 3 3/4. Definitely all correlates the same direction. Goalless draw, you win both. 1-0, you win both. 2-0, Inter, you win one and draw the other. 3-0, you split. That's some good odds right there to potentially get home and win two matches or two bets on the same match. Last Nope, two matches left to go. I guess one we'll do a lot less time on, though, to say the least. We'll go next to Bayer Leverkusen. They are hosting Olympiacos in a third matchup as they played in I think match day 7, I want to say, in the league phase. Olympiacos at home in Athens, winning that 2-0, and then losing in the first leg of the knockouts 2-0 on one incredible counterattack with Patrick Schick, and then 3 minutes later, a header from, well, you guessed it, Patrick Schick again. So I don't know that Leverkusen were that impressive. Honestly, the money betting market into that kickoff was a lot of Olympiacos money. I think they had climbed all the way to a quarter goal favorite from Pick'em. Yeah, they were Pick'em -122 when I first saw it, climbed all the way to -132, tipped over to -1/4 of a goal. And that kind of was the way the first matchup went, where the market liked Olympiacos. They were right in the first one, were not in the second, but you could argue there was some fortune there, or just Olympiacos had a goal ruled out for offside and really take their chances after that. And Leverkusen got a really good goal scorer who's in great form, and if he's on the pitch, Patrick Schick is usually awesome. And that was a big step because now Olympiacos is going to win by 2 goals on the road. That's a lot to ask, especially as a 3/4 goal underdog with all the juice on the Olympiacos side. Where is this moved? Just bet 2 cents higher on the Olympiacos side. I imagine this is going to fall to a half a goal because they need to win, and just covering the spread with a draw is Leverkusen celebrating at the final whistle. Olympiacos is crying, and we're all celebrating because we're cashing our ticket on +1/2 or +3/4 of a goal if it's a draw. There are some risks that Leverkusen are going to kill them because Olympiacos are going to have to go all out for it. But I think we've seen with Jose Luis Mendilibar, longtime manager in La Liga in Spain, he plays one way. It's a high line, and it's going to, I mean, it didn't work against Patrick Schick that one time, but the current 3/4 of a goal, if he gets through once, they lose by a single goal, you only lose half your bet. So that is where I think the 3/4 of a goal is and has some value in terms of the total. I'll get to that now. So currently 3, just all the way to under -124. That has climbed from an initial 2 3/4 goal spread with a lot of juice to over. So to me, it makes sense. A little bit more juice, -124 right now on under 3 because it's an important, essential push right there if it lands there. And Olympiacos are playing to, they want a high scoring game because if it's very, very tame, then they're not going to equalize or level up aggregate. Bayer Leverkusen probably want to play a conservative game, but they're a goal scoring team. They have been for forever, especially under Xavi Alonso, though that was more, I think, a high pressure type of scenario. Kasper Hjulmand has been the balance between the idiot that is Eric Ten Hag, who just was absolutely, completely lost, and what Xavi Alonso was doing. And he's done really well there, to be frank. So I think I'm fairly interested in the Olympiacos side, especially because they need to win and they're an underdog. That's pretty basic, I guess. But I don't know that I want much to do with totals here because I do feel like they kind of go the opposite ways that I'd want this to go. I'd want the road underdog to be playing a low scoring game and not opening up too much. I'd want the home favorite to be trying to score a ton of goals, which we probably do have. So maybe we have both teams going towards over. And longtime Patreon subscriber, patreon.com/real_G Warner for all plays across all sports, including a recent hot streak in college basketball. Finally, Joe Dollar, longtime Patreon subscriber. I know he's really happy for me to potentially he's even suggesting over. And kind of feeling that right now. Over 3 plus 104, getting some odds right now. And that's a little bit interesting to me at the moment. I don't love giving away a push, especially since a 2 3/4 was available earlier, but things happen. And sometimes saving juice is important in this sport because it is extremely expensive. Last matchup we'll go through. We have no two advanced number because Carbog, well, I still have the match going on in the background. It's currently 6-1 Newcastle. Anthony Gordon's, I think, scored 4 goals in the first half. Hilarious defending, one including right off of a kickoff from his previous goal, which was wild. And Carbog was a very strong interest for me, but they didn't make the card a lot because I just wasn't sure that they could handle a Premier League budget. Just how different from last episode, we talked about how I think it was like 70 times different the budget for Newcastle versus Karabag of Azerbaijan, and it's an awesome story for them to get to the knockout rounds. But it's kind of like college basketball reference, the Cinderella that slipper still fits. Sometimes it doesn't, and it gets real ugly in that second game after they knock out somebody in the first leg or first round of the NCAA tournament. Right now, I guess I'll go through the spread. There's not a lot here for me. Newcastle 2.5 goal favorites right now. That has climbed in the Newcastle direction. It was initially Karabag plus 2.5 even money. I feel like Newcastle, I mean, they want to ensure that they're getting through, so they probably put up big lineup, starting lineup, because that's what Champions League contenders seem to do, or just teams in general, especially if you're in the knockout stage. You're not taking that for granted. But then I think we see some early and often substitutes and try to get as much rest out there, or any kind of fringe players that are, or sometimes starters. You might see them like potentially no Bruno Guimaraes, instead have like Lucas Miley or whatever his name is, Miley coming in. I was about to say Wade Miley, but he's a pitcher, and baseball season's coming up soon. In terms of the spread, that's what I gave you. The total's 3 3/4, just very heavily to over. Um, I don't know. I mean, quarterback needs to score a million goals. Are they going to just try to play for pride and try to get a result 0-0 away from home? Does Newcastle even care? They probably score once and it's over. It's basically over as it is. I don't know. There's a lot for me in that matchup. So, fairly safe guess that it's not going to be an ultimate best bet nominee. Which is time to get there. We had a three-way podcast of the Need for Seeds College Basketball podcast with A. Brooks Betts coming on and winning his best bet. Also, Big East Ben every Friday, and I go over the Saturday card. We're expecting to do that again this weekend. Hopefully that all goes according to plan, especially if we're getting a lot closer to March. And I know a lot of the Twitter subscribers have been coming in. I appreciate you all coming back. So we're going to have a big, big March because we need it. And there's going to be a lot of time that's going to be spent breaking this all down at the Real_G Warner across all social media platforms, especially on Patreon. If you want to get my plays first, including a big winner on UNC tonight. I got a little bit hairy late. Other things, just more soccer coming on this podcast. Still trying to get A. Brooks Betts to commit to the Major League Baseball podcast returning on this network, but check that out. And of course, I'm still on pregame.com doing my own show. It's called What I Bet, and I'm about to record that for tomorrow, Tuesday, February 24th, including the whole college basketball slate, going through that as well. But for the ultimate best bet in this episode, I'm going with the Bruges 1.25 goal underdogs on the road at Atletico Madrid. I love what they do. I think they play an incredibly intelligent but always underrated brand of football, and they're going to try to go score goals, which I think is probably better than trying to sit in and defend for 90 minutes. So they do have that option if they want to play that way. I don't think they will, which does bring in some risk, but when they're getting more than a goal, I think that's still of great interest to me. So I'll play Bruges plus 1.25. And that'll do it for this very brief episode, which somehow didn't stay so brief. And I'll talk to you on tomorrow's episode of the next slate of the Wednesday knockout round of 32 Champions League in 2026. See you then.